A royal historian has just obtained the one document Charles hoped would stay buried forever, a classified memo granting Camilla equal power over succession. But Princess Anne read it first. Insiders say her hands shook as she realized this single page could erase her brother's entire legacy in one stroke. What exact clause made Anne whisper "this ends now"? Why did Charles hide it even from William? The historian now reveals the hidden meeting where the plan was born and the terrifying reason Anne decided the crown itself was in danger. This isn't just family drama. This is the beginning of the end of Charles's reign. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The memo was only 12 lines long, typed in crisp black ink on palace stationery that carried the faint scent of centuries-old tradition. Yet those lines struck like lightning. Her Majesty the Queen Consort shall hold equal deliberative authority in all matters of succession, including the right to propose, amend, or veto any candidate with full sovereign weight. Senior royals who glimpsed it felt the floor shift beneath them. This was no polite title adjustment. This was a quiet rewrite of the monarchy's spine, handing Camilla a power no consort had ever touched. Charles had signed it in secret, driven by the raw ache of Camilla's decades-long wait, the public humiliations, the private nights when she wondered if the crown would ever truly claim her as its own. He believed this single act would finally right every wrong, sealing their story in stone. Palace aides had seen the warning signs for months. Sudden schedule changes, late-night meetings in locked rooms at Highgrove, Camilla's name slipping into classified briefings where it had never belonged before. They told themselves it was harmless affection, nothing more. They looked away. They stayed silent. Until Anne received her copy. Her hands trembled the moment the envelope was placed in her palm. She read it once, then again, the colour draining from her face until she looked like a woman staring at her own execution order. "This ends now," she whispered, voice low and lethal, the words slicing through the quiet of her private study. The princess, who had stood guard over her brother's image for a lifetime, suddenly felt the institution she loved slipping into dangerous territory. She knew what this meant. One day Camilla could steer the line of succession itself, turning blood and duty into personal preference. The betrayal cut deeper, because William had been kept completely in the dark, no briefing, no warning, just deliberate exclusion that left the future king pacing alone at Adelaide Cottage, isolated in a silence heavier than any public duty he had ever carried. He stared at blank walls, wondering why his own father had chosen secrecy over trust, why the crown he was raised to inherit was being reshaped without him. The emotional weight pressed down until breathing felt like effort. Every old tension that had simmered beneath royal smiles now roared to the surface. Decades of careful protocol, swallowed resentments, and quiet sacrifices collided in that single document. The historian's voice drops here, heavy with the knowledge of what came next. A secret vote was already being whispered about in the corridors, a closed-door gathering where alliances would be tested and the future of Charles' entire legacy would hang by a thread. The air inside the palace grew thick with dread. Phones were watched. Doors were locked. Everyone felt it. The throne itself was already cracking, and the first fracture had just been exposed. Yet the real explosion came the moment Anne refused to stay silent and turned to the one ally no one saw coming. Anne read the memo twice, then slammed it down and uttered 4 words that still echo inside palace walls: "Over my dead body." The princess, who spent a lifetime protecting her brother's image, was now ready to destroy it. Palace leaks reveal the private letter she weaponized against Charles and the chilling threat she delivered face to face. What clause about Camilla's new powers triggered her most? Why did decades of quiet loyalty suddenly turn into open war? The historian exposes the exact second Anne decided her brother's legacy would not survive this betrayal. Those 14 words seared into her mind like a brand: the Queen Consort, shall exercise joint prerogative in succession deliberations, with veto authority equal to the sovereign. Equal. Veto. The terms alone felt like treason against everything the monarchy had stood for since the Act of Settlement. Anne had never been one for theatrics, yet in that moment the room seemed to shrink around her, the weight of centuries pressing down until rage became the only thing left to breathe. She had spent her life in the background, swallowing headlines, burying personal grief, standing silent while scandals swirled around others, because someone had to protect the institution when everyone else chased affection or spotlight. Loyalty had been her armor, her identity. Now that armor cracked open, revealing the fury beneath. The shift wasn't sudden. It had been building for years in quiet resentments and swallowed indignities. But this memo was the final insult. The moment tradition itself was offered up on the altar of personal redemption. She clutched the private letter Charles had sent her after their mother's funeral words meant to comfort, now turned into ammunition. You remain the steadfast heart of this family, Anne. Nothing will change that. She read them aloud in the dim antechamber where a handful of aides had been summoned in haste, her voice steady at first, then breaking with something close to grief. Nothing will change? She repeated, eyes locked on the empty chair where her brother should have been. You promised me stability. You promised the crown would stay sacred. And now you hand the keys to someone who was never meant to hold them. The betrayal burned hotter because it came from the one person she had always believed understood duty the way she did. Charles wasn't just her brother. He was the sovereign she had sworn to serve without question. Questioning him now felt like tearing her own heart out. The confrontation came swiftly and without ceremony. Anne marched straight to him, letter and memo in hand, voice low but carrying the force of a storm held back too long. Charles tried to interrupt, to explain, to frame it as love and fairness. She cut him off with a single raised hand. This isn't love, she said. This is surrender. And if you push this forward, I will stand against you publicly, loudly, and without apology. The room went still. Charles sat motionless, the colour draining from his face as he registered the steel in her gaze. No shouting, no slammed doors, just a quiet, devastating promise that left him speechless. For the first time in decades, the Princess Royal looked at her king not as family, but as a threat to everything she had sacrificed to preserve. Inside, the war raged without mercy. Every memory of shared childhoods, every quiet moment of support during crises, every time she had stepped forward so he could shine, all of it clashed against the cold reality of what she now had to do. Family duty screamed for silence. Institutional survival demanded rebellion. The emotional toll was merciless, nights spent staring into darkness, wondering if saving the crown meant losing her brother forever. Yet resolve hardened around the pain like iron around flame. She would not bend. She could not. The monarchy she loved had to outlast them all, even if it meant standing alone against the man who wore it. Anne stood alone in her defiance, until one late-night call flipped the entire battlefield. Behind locked doors at 2 a.m., the most powerful royals gathered for a vote that would never appear in any official record. Charles presented his vision for Camilla with quiet confidence. Anne and William sat side by side, faces like stone. What coded phrases sealed their secret alliance? What devastating ultimatum did Anne deliver if the plan passed? The historian now discloses the exact tally, the stunned silence that followed, and the moment Charles realized his own heir had turned against him. The council meant to protect the crown had just shattered it. The summons had come without warning, delivered by trusted couriers in unmarked envelopes. Assemble at Clarence House. No aides, no phones, no trace. Every participant surrendered their devices at the threshold. The room itself had been swept for listening devices twice in the preceding hour. Only the innermost circle entered: Charles at the head of the long oak table, Anne to his left, William directly opposite. a handful of senior blood royals completing the circle like silent sentinels. No minutes would be taken. No record would exist beyond memory and conscience. The air felt thick, charged with the knowledge that whatever happened here would bind them forever or break them apart. Charles began with measured calm, framing the proposal as evolution rather than revolution. Camilla's equal voice in succession: matters would honor loyalty, strengthen continuity, safeguard the monarchy in turbulent times. His tone stayed even, almost gentle, yet those who knew him caught the subtle strain, the unspoken plea that family would once more rally around his deepest wish. Anne and William had arrived together, a deliberate statement that rippled unease through the room before a single word was spoken. They spoke little at first, letting Charles lay out his case. But when he paused for questions, Anne murmured, almost to herself, "The foundation must hold." William answered without looking up, voice low, stone by stone. To outsiders, the exchange sounded vague, almost poetic. To everyone present, it landed like a gunshot. The alliance was confirmed in those 4 quiet words, no grand declarations, no overt gestures, just the unbreakable signal that brother and sister-in-law stood as one against the plan. Charles faltered for the briefest second, eyes flicking between them, the first shadow of doubt crossing his face. He pressed on, outlining safeguards and benefits, but the confidence had thinned. Every glance toward his son now carried a question he dared not voice aloud. Camilla had been excluded by design. Charles insisted her presence would turn constitutional debate into personal grievance, clouding judgment at the critical hour. The absence felt heavier as the discussion deepened, a silent acknowledgement that this was no longer about affection alone, it was about power, legacy, the very shape of the throne. When the vote came, it arrived without fanfare. One by one hands rose or remained flat on the table. Charles cast first affirmative, fingers steady despite the tremor inside. Anne followed negative, gaze unyielding. William's hand stayed down, his no delivered so softly it might have been lost if the room hadn't already gone deathly quiet. The final tally landed like a verdict, 5 against, 4 in favor. A historic fracture, razor-thin yet absolute. Silence swallowed everything. No one moved. Charles sat frozen, stare locked on his son, the realization crashing over him in slow, merciless waves. The heir he had raised, the boy who once looked to him for every answer, had chosen the institution over the father. The emotional fallout rippled outward in the stillness that followed sharp breaths, averted eyes, the faint scrape of chairs as bodies shifted under unbearable weight. Charles finally rose, voice hoarse and hollow. So be it. The words carried no closure, only the echo of a man watching his carefully constructed future collapse. Anne delivered her parting ultimatum as the group began to disperse. If any effort was made to revive the proposal beyond these walls, she would force the fracture into daylight, compelling every senior royal to declare a side in public view. The threat lingered like smoke, impossible to dismiss. The vote was cast, but the real war detonated the instant Camilla learned the truth. One text from Charles: "They voted against us." Camilla dropped her phone and screamed into the empty room, words so violent they still haunt the staff who overheard. The historian reveals her private meltdown, the accusations she hurled at both Anne and William, and the blood-chilling vow she made that night. After waiting decades for full power, the woman who finally reached the throne had just been rejected by the 2 royals who mattered most. The monarchy's most explosive confrontation was only beginning. The message landed at 3:17 a.m., 3 cold words glowing on the screen like a death sentence. Camilla stood motionless for a heartbeat. Then the phone slipped from numb fingers and clattered across the parquet floor. A raw animal sound ripped out of her. No, not them. Not after everything. The scream built into something primal, echoing through the silent corridors of Clarence House until it reached the night staff who froze where they stood. pretending later they had heard nothing. She collapsed onto the nearest sofa, body shaking uncontrollably, hands clawing at the silk of her robe as though she could tear the humiliation from her skin. Decades of endurance, public scorn, private exile, the endless performance of grace under fire crashed down in that single instant. She had believed the throne would finally be hers in truth, not just in name. Now the two people whose approval she had craved most had slammed the door in her face. Tears came hot and furious, rage mingling with disbelief until she could hardly breathe. Charles arrived within the hour, summoned by her frantic, broken call. The door had barely closed before she rounded on him, voice cracking like glass under pressure. "Your son," she spat, the word dripping venom. "Your precious heir. He looked you in the eye and said no to you. To us, to everything we fought for." Charles reached for her, murmuring apologies, promises to fix what had shattered, but she recoiled as though his touch burned. The confrontation erupted in jagged fragments. She turned her fury first on William. He pretends the crown is sacred while he stabs his own father in the back. All those years of playing the perfect prince, and he chooses her Anne over blood. Then the rage swung toward Anne like a blade, and the Princess Royal, always so superior, always lecturing on duty, she sat there and orchestrated the whole thing. She's hated me since the beginning. This was her revenge, her way of punishing me for every headline she ever blamed on my existence. Charles stood silent under the onslaught, face ashen, the weight of his children's rejection pressing harder than any crown ever had. Every word Camilla flung felt like another crack in the foundation he had tried so desperately to reinforce. Her voice finally dropped to something colder, more lethal. She wiped her face with trembling hands and fixed him with a stare stripped of every softness. I waited. I changed. I became exactly what they demanded. And they still see the intruder. The mistake. She drew a shuddering breath. If they think this ends here, they are wrong. I will protect what is mine at any cost. They want to push me out? I will make sure the world watches them bleed trying. The vow hung between them, heavy and irrevocable. It wasn't empty rage. It was survival instinct sharpened to a razor's edge. The old wound of being the outsider had ripped open again, raw and pulsing. She had convinced herself Charles's love would bridge every gap, heal every scar. Now even that felt fragile, uncertain. The pain crushed her anew, the isolation of standing just outside belonging, the exhaustion of proving herself over and over only to be denied at the final gate. While Camilla began plotting her revenge, the palace walls were already cracking under the weight of the leaked vote. Within hours, the secret vote exploded across every front page. William turns on father. Hashtags went nuclear. The historian discloses Charles' desperate damage control calls, William's agonizing public silence, and the internal poll that showed the monarchy's approval crashing overnight. What threats were issued to kill the story? How did Anne defend her stance behind closed doors? The family that once closed ranks in crisis now stood divided in front of the entire planet. The breach came from deep inside the circle, a junior aide present at the 2 a.m. council. Someone who had watched the vote unfold with growing horror and could no longer carry the weight of silence alone. By 6:47 a.m., the first story dropped on a major broadsheets website. Bare-bones facts laced with just enough detail to ignite global fire. The razor-thin defeat, the names involved, the stakes laid bare. Within minutes, copy-paste versions flooded every outlet. Tabloids screamed betrayal in 72-point type. Television panels spun up emergency broadcasts. Social media detonated, #Royal Split rocketed to #1 worldwide. Threads clashing in fury and glee. Memes slicing through grief like knives. The speed felt merciless, unstoppable. Charles's private office transformed into a war room before the sun fully rose. He placed call after frantic call to editors he had known for decades, to media barons who owed him favors, even authorizing veiled legal warnings that hovered on the edge of outright intimidation, retract, delay, or face consequences that could stretch far beyond courtrooms. Every effort only poured fuel on the blaze. The story mutated faster than any containment could match. William chose silence, a deliberate, agonizing choice that spoke louder than any statement could have. No tweet, no carefully scripted video, no appearance to steady the ship. Insiders say he sat for hours staring at draft after draft on his phone, each version torn between defending the father he still loved and upholding the principle that had forced his hand. The conflict gnawed at him relentlessly. Catherine stayed close, shielding him from the worst of the digital storm, yet nothing could block the ache of knowing every headline painted him as the traitor to his own blood. Publicly mute while the world judged him, he carried the isolation like a second skin, the future king reduced to watching his legacy questioned in real time. Anne, by contrast, refused to vanish. In tightly controlled private briefings with her most trusted circle, she defended her position with unyielding clarity. "I did not vote against my brother. I voted against turning the crown into a personal possession. If silence equals complicity, then I will speak clearly, repeatedly, and without regret." Her words carried the weight of someone who had spent a lifetime in the shadows, only stepping forward when the institution itself teetered on the brink. No softening, no apology. Just iron conviction wrapped in duty. The media frenzy fed on itself, pundits shouting over one another on every channel, historians dragged into studios to declare this the gravest internal crisis since the abdication, royal correspondents breathlessly forecasting everything from quiet reconciliation to full constitutional meltdown. Charles watched the coverage unfold from behind drawn curtains. The man who had waited so long to lead now witnessing his reign teeter on the brink of public contempt. Internal polling arrived in brutal hourly waves. Approval of the monarchy plunged 11 points overnight, the sharpest single drop ever recorded. Younger demographics turned especially savage, branding the institution outdated, fractured, irrelevant. The numbers screamed one truth: the carefully curated aura of unbreakable unity had shattered, and the shards were drawing blood. Every frantic attempt to suppress the story only amplified the narrative. Cover up, desperation, weakness. Advisors whispered the unthinkable how long before major sponsors quietly withdrew support, before foreign tours were scaled back, before the question no one wanted to face was asked aloud: is the monarchy still fit for the modern world? The headlines burned bright, but the deepest scars were still forming behind closed doors. Behind the screaming headlines, 3 lives lay in ruins. Charles stares at old family photos he can no longer bear to touch. William battles guilt that steals his sleep. Anne carries the weight of her defiance like a crown of thorns. The historian reveals the private regrets haunting each of them, the small gestures of love now lost forever, and the final letter that arrived far too late. The vote that was supposed to protect Charles' legacy had instead buried it. In the quiet hours after midnight, Charles sat alone in the study at Clarence House, the same room where he had once read bedtime stories to a small boy who believed his father could fix anything. Now the albums lay open on the desk, faded snapshots of William on his shoulders at Balmoral, the two of them laughing after a football match, the proud day William first wore his RAF uniform. Each image felt like an accusation. He had framed the plan for Camilla as justice, as love long denied. Yet in protecting one bond, he had severed the deepest one he possessed. The morning was silent, tearless, a slow hemorrhage of regret that left him hollow. He replayed the council meeting in endless loops, searching for the moment he could have spoken differently, reached differently, kept his son from turning away. The small gestures that once came so naturally, the late-night texts checking in, the handwritten notes tucked into birthday cards, the quiet pride shared over a glass of whiskey, now felt impossible, poisoned by the memory of that single raised hand saying no. He had lost more than a vote. He had lost the future he had imagined they would share. William carried his own torment in the stillness of Adelaide Cottage. Sleep came in fragments, broken by waves of guilt that crashed without warning. Had he betrayed the father who had fought through every storm to keep the family intact? Or had he betrayed the children sleeping down the hall, the ones who would inherit a crown he had just helped fracture? The self-doubt circled like a predator, stealing appetite, stealing peace. He withdrew inward, conversations with Catherine growing shorter, his answers clipped, his eyes distant. She watched helplessly as the man who had always been the steady center retreated behind walls no one could breach. Publicly he remained composed, but privately the conflict tore at him the memory of Charles's stunned face across the table, the weight of choosing institution over blood. Every recollection of shared triumphs now carried a bitter edge. Every plan for the future felt shadowed by uncertainty. The emotional withdrawal was not dramatic, it was a slow, grinding retreat. A future king learning to live with the knowledge that he had wounded the one person whose approval had once meant everything. Anne wore her stoic mask in public, schedule unbroken, posture unyielding, voice calm, but the mask concealed a pain that cut to the bone. Nights at Gatcombe found her staring into the fire, replaying the confrontation, the look in Charles's eyes when William's hand stayed down. She had voted to save the monarchy, yet in doing so she had shattered the last fragile threads connecting her to her brother. Defiance had once felt righteous. Now it felt like exile. She told herself it was duty, nothing more, but the inner ache whispered of sacrifice too steep. The irreplaceable moments haunted them all, the easy Christmases that would never feel warm again, the casual phone calls that had ceased, the birthdays where forced politeness would replace genuine affection. Those ordinary threads of love, once taken for granted, had unraveled beyond mending. Then came the final letter, delivered by courier the morning after the leak broke wide open. Charles's handwriting on the envelope, formal yet unsteady, addressed jointly to Anne and William. It arrived too late to alter the course of events, yet its contents struck like a quiet thunderclap. Inside were not accusations, not demands, but a raw admission, sorrow for the blindness that had led him here, love that had never wavered even in the face of opposition, regret for every moment he had failed to see the cost. "I only ever wanted to protect what we built together," he wrote. "If I have broken it instead, forgive me if you can." The words changed nothing on paper, yet they broke something deeper inside each recipient, the realization that beneath the titles and the protocol, they were still just a fractured family bleeding in silence. The long-term toll settled like frost, trust eroded beyond quick repair, nights lengthened by unanswered questions, a shared legacy now shadowed by permanent division. The silence between them is now permanent, yet one final decision would determine whether Charles's legacy survived at all. Insiders warn the next 90 days will either save or destroy Charles' entire reign. Will he reverse the plan? Will Camilla fight back in public? Will William and Anne hold the line? The historian lays out the projected scenarios, the secret reconciliation attempts already underway, and the one final move being prepared in total secrecy. The human cost is already staggering, father and son estranged, trust in ruins, a crown fighting for its future. Whatever happens next will redefine the monarchy forever. The clock is ticking toward a precipice no one can fully map. In the shadowed corridors of power, 3 stark futures are already being whispered about in hushed tones. Charles could withdraw the entire proposal in a quiet capitulation, framing it as a gesture of unity and healing, yet such a retreat would leave Camilla politically naked, her long-awaited authority reduced once again to symbolic courtesy. The very humiliation she had fought decades to escape. He might instead dig in deeper, quietly courting wavering courtiers, leveraging private dinners with influential figures, even exploring obscure constitutional pathways that bypass the council vote altogether. Either choice demands blood, swallow pride to mend the rift with his son, or gamble the institution's stability on a woman the public has never fully forgiven. Camilla, her rage now tempered into cold strategy, refuses to fade. Every public appearance becomes a calculated statement, poised smiles masking iron determination, carefully chosen charities reinforcing her indispensability. She knows the game has shifted. Survival means outlasting the storm, not outshouting it. Yet the scars run deep, and the fear that history might repeat itself gnaws at her every quiet moment. Behind the scenes, fragile threads of reconciliation are being tested in utmost secrecy. Intermediaries, long-trusted private secretaries, distant cousins who owe loyalty to no single side carry messages back and forth. A proposed meeting at Balmoral under the guise of routine estate business. A handwritten note from William slipped through secure channels, words chosen with agonizing care. Charles has already drafted several responses he never sends, each one torn between fatherly longing and kingly resolve. Anne remains the hardest wall to breach. Her silence is not anger, but conviction. A refusal to bend until the principle is secured. The emotional cost mounts with every passing day, father and son estranged by more than geography, trust eroded to threads. A family once bound by shared duty, now navigating minefields of unspoken hurt. Public perception hangs by the same fraying rope. Global polls show cracks widening. Younger audiences applaud the stand against unchecked power, while older traditionalists lament division at the very top. The monarchy's relevance is no longer a given. It must be fought for anew in every engagement, every tour, every carefully worded statement. The contrast is brutal. Decades of projected harmony replaced by raw, human fracture. The ultimate test looms larger with each sunrise: loyalty versus tradition, personal affection versus the cold demands of an ancient institution. One misstep and the balance tips irreversibly. Insiders speak of a final, audacious move already in motion, something being prepared in complete secrecy. Perhaps a public address from an unexpected voice, a revelation timed for maximum impact, or a quiet threat of abdication that would force every player back to the table under impossible. Pressure. Whatever form it takes, that single act could forge a new era of transparency and restraint or ignite the kind of constitutional crisis that topples dynasties in the modern age. The next 90 days will reveal whether the House of Windsor bends under strain or breaks apart entirely, whether blood proves thicker than protocol, or whether protocol finally exacts its full, merciless price. Every path led to the same moment, the moment a royal historian says Anne made the decision that will echo through history. One vote, one alliance, one irreversible stand. After weeks of silence, Princess Anne has made her final decision about her brother's legacy, and the royal historian now reveals every explosive detail. Will Charles bow to his sister's ultimatum? Will Camilla's influence survive? Will the monarchy adapt or fracture beyond repair? The historian discloses the exact nature of Anne's choice, the private letter she has already prepared, and the devastating cost if Charles refuses. The story that began with a hidden memo ends with a decision that will define the House of Windsor for generations. The crown is trembling. The final chapter is being written right now. The royal historian's voice lowers, carrying the weight of exclusive access granted in the dead of night. Anne summoned him to Gatcombe Park under cover of darkness. No aides, no record, just a single folder placed on the table between them. Inside lay her final decision etched in her own hand, sealed, addressed directly to the king. The ultimatum is stark, unyielding: withdraw any proposal granting the Queen Consort deliberative or veto power over succession. Affirm in writing that the line of succession remains governed solely by blood and statute, unaltered by personal affection. Fail to comply within 30 days, and I will publicly release every document, every conversation, every moment of this crisis, leaving no room for ambiguity about who chose the crown over family. Those words, delivered without tremor, mark the point of no return. Anne's reasoning cuts to the bone: the institution must outlive them all. Blood ties are sacred, yet they cannot supersede the ancient contract between monarch and people. To allow Camilla equal say in who inherits is to transform the throne from eternal symbol into private estate. She will not preside over that betrayal. Duty, in her eyes, demands this line in the sand, even if drawing it severs the last thread, connecting her to the brother she once shielded from every storm. Charles now faces the cruelest fork in the road. He could comply, swallow pride, issue the required affirmation, preserve the fragile peace with his sister and son. Yet every concession would diminish Camilla's standing further, reopening old wounds of exclusion she has fought a lifetime to close. He could refuse stand by his original vision, call Anne's bluff, force her hand into public exposure. But the historian warns the cost would be catastrophic. Parliamentary questions, media firestorms, a steady drip of leaked documents eroding public confidence until the monarchy's very legitimacy hangs by a thread. Reconciliation paths still flicker in the shadows, private dinners engineered through neutral intermediaries, handwritten pleas carried by trusted cousins, quiet meetings at Sandringham disguised as routine. Yet each attempt carries the same fatal flaw. Trust, once shattered, does not rebuild on whispers alone. Anne's conviction runs deeper than sentiment. It is forged in decades of watching the crown endure by remaining above personal desire. She will not bend unless the principle itself is secured. The decision ushers in a new era, one of permanent division beneath the polished surface of royal unity. Public appearances will continue, smiles maintained, duties fulfilled. But behind closed doors the fractures will deepen, father and son speaking through lawyers rather than late-night calls, sister and brother exchanging formal correspondence instead of easy affection, Camilla navigating every engagement with the knowledge that her place remains contested. The monarchy will adapt, leaner, more transparent, perhaps more restrained in its personal indulgences, or it will fracture beyond repair, the slow bleed of relevance turning into open hemorrhage. Hope lingers in the possibility of quiet healing, in time softening edges that rage once sharpened. Yet the historian's tone carries an ominous undertone. The crown has survived wars, abdications, revolutions. It has never before faced a rebellion born entirely from within its own bloodline. The final chapter is still being written, and the person who holds the pen may be the one no one expects. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.